Hi, this is Sophie, Simon and Ben from That Final Scene.
Yeah, we just want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Amazon Music where you can find this very podcast.
So, let's dive in, shall we?
I said it before and I'll say it again.
That scene, that last scene.
What does it mean?
I'm the dude, you know?
Get the fuck out of here. No, I cannot. That final scene starts now.
Well, hi. You're listening to the That Final Scene podcast. Allegedly the number one podcast on movie endings and spoilers. I mean, I don't know if that's true.
Okay,
I'm
allegedly, yeah. I'm glad
in Algeria.
Yeah, I was going to say, in what random country is that? We're the number one podcast in Bhutan.
We did have some interesting rankings recently, but they always seem to change.
When you say interesting...
Is this going to be using interesting in a really broad sense?
No, it's like number 3 in Italy 2 weeks ago. What about Ireland a few weeks ago?
Oh, yeah, well, my mate Dara always listens, and if Dara... Hi, Dara, you're probably the reason we're number one in Ireland.
Hey.
Well, not number one, but high up there.
Our number one listening bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also use the word interesting because we did rank fairly high on Russia recently, which is interesting. I'm going to use that
I don't know how I feel about that.
So I don't know how I
Putin
feel.
loves Donnie Darko.
Oh, Christ.
He locked in.
That Halloween episode got to him.
He falls to sleep listening to the Sweeney Todd soundtrack.
For some reason, I can see.
The throat-slitting montage in Sweeney Todd, which I watched the other day, and I was shook by the violence. in it.
Really? Okay.
Give us your reaction.
Well, I thought Sacha Baron Cohen was ridiculously good.
Yep.
And there wasn't enough of him in the film. I'd love it if
He was
if
a
his
bit
part
part.
could have been extended a bit more into the film.
Sacha Baron Cohen is king of those kind of cameos because he cameos in the Les Mis movie as well as like the master of the house. He's in like one scene and he's brilliant as well. He's brilliant as well. Like he's very good at just like popping in and out of movies.
He's just so disgustingly talented. Like he can just pop into a film like Sweeney Todd and just sing majestically.
Do you see what I mean now
Be
about
funny.
why they probably had him queued up for Freddie Mercury, especially off the back of that? Not that Rami Malek didn't do a great job, but you know.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it, but some of the songs just I found a bit too long, and just the violence of the throat slitting and that bit when the bodies keep falling down the meat tunnel.
Oh yes, down that, yeah. I find that more uncomfortable to watch the bits when they're falling down and hitting the ground than the actual throat slitting. I find that just like the idea of like falling from a height like that.
I think it would have landed better if the actual actors were proper singers, or they had like some sort of singing background, because none of them did. Like, I think it was the very first time Johnny Depp sang on, quote unquote, big screen. Carter isn't really a singer herself. I mean, she did okay.
Everybody in it, apart from maybe Sacha Baron Cohen and maybe Jamie Campbell Bowers, he seems to have quite a good voice. I think they admit that they're not going to be the strongest singers in the world, and so are trying to like sing in the character, and that makes it especially Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, and then obviously Timothy Spall and Alan Rickman, who listen.
I miss Timothy.
They can make no mistakes.
He's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah, Timothy Spall. Alan Rickman.
It made me want to go back and watch If He Did His Own Pet. Watching that. Do you know what that is, Sophie?
No.
It's
Have
like,
you not heard of Arvita St. Pet? Oh, what a theme tune.
It's probably what, from the late 70s, early 80s?
So we play it?
Working on the site from morning till night. That's living all right.
Reminds me of my mum and dad because they're from Newcastle up north, which is like a city in the north of England for any American listeners.
Yeah, for any of those people from those interesting countries that we don't know.
We have plenty of, people from, not here, so...
And I guess I'm a Geordie by extension. And
The least Geordie sounding
it's about
Geordie.
a group of guys who are construction workers. And it's just about their lives. And they go to Germany and they go to Spain.
Because I didn't realise it was a thing apparently in like the 70s and 80s. A load of construction workers went to work in Germany because there was work there. And so, it's just about a bunch of Geordie
on a building site. They all live together in a dormitory. There's Jimmy Nail, Timothy Spall's there. And all these actors did it with no training. And that was their training. And Timothy Spall, you can see...
It's one of Timothy Spall's, I think it's his first gig, I think.
And you can see there's a sort of seed of what he's going to become. But they're all just amateurs, really.
Brilliant.
But it's like watching a school play.
Oh, I love him.
Have you watched anything
Understated.
else other than Sweeney Todd?
Oh, so my mind's literally gone blank.
That's okay.
If you've watched The Prestige again, Simon, it's fine. You can say it.
It's okay to admit that.
Hang on a minute.
Maybe that's when we get to the feel good movie section. Maybe that's mine.
This is Doubtfire.
Nuns on the Run.
Wait, you mentioned Nuns on the Run. We've got to mention Robbie Coltrane.
Oh yeah, of course. That was so sad.
Because he's one of my heroes.
Yeah.
And I know some people know him from the Harry Potter films, but I know him from
The first thing,
Cracker, I'd say, is the thing that I know him from.
The first thing I know him from, and to go back to my thing that I always go back to, is I know him from James Bond. He's in two of the Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
He's in GoldenEye and The World's Not Enough. As
So-
Valentin Zukovsky.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Robbie Coltrane.
There was that lovely quote that was going around from the Harry Potter documentary from last year where he said, you know, it was something like along the lines of like, I won't be around, but these films will be, you know, and about people kind of getting joy from the movies and stuff. He's like, you know, they'll outlast me and all that. He seems like such a nice man.
That's
Yeah. He's the real deal.
But you weren't watching a Robbie Coltrane film then?
While you're thinking about it, I'm gonna go back to Sacha for a second because I have been watching. Well, I started watching The Spy on Netflix. I had
What's
a
that?
really good friend of mine recommended that. So it's a limited series. I think it's I'm not sure how many episodes, but 6 episodes. And it's the story of one of the most prominent spies in Israel, taking back to 1960s, and it's Sacha playing that person, Eli Cohen, I don't know, I'm not sure how to pronounce that right, who infiltrated the Syrian government in the 1960s. And that's, you know, him playing a super serious role. And it goes back to what you said, like he's a beast. Like you can't, like, I think the moment you see him on the screen, you're like, haha, Borat. and then 10 minutes later, like you forgot, like it's him on the screen. He's just incredible.
To be honest, I was going to suggest if we, with all the political turmoil here in the UK, we should definitely do Ali G in the house as an episode.
But just because I have it on my notes, I think you've mentioned that you finished Homeland recently, right? No?
No, I watched it years ago.
Oh, years ago. So it's from the same creator, The Spy, Gideon Raff. So
Gideon Raff.
Yeah, it's very
What a fantastic name.
Yeah. For those of you out
It's
there who love a
Rafe,
good,
actually.
a good spy, show, like it's really, really, really good. What about you, Ben?
What have I been watching? Obviously watched Little Miss Sunshine for the episode this week, which is good. And my girlfriend hadn't seen it before, so it was her first time seeing it, which is always nice. And what else have I watched? I finally finished Lord of the Rings and House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter, does it? Who cares?
I mean,
Every time we make Ben talk about it,
Do you know what, Simon?
he's given up defending it.
Do you know what, Simon? Because do you know what? I was.
Look, he's got his hands on his face.
do you know
his
what-
head's
this is very
bowed.
cool. Yeah, that should be a video.
The thing
given
that,
in.
the thing, because I was thinking back to something that you said about me, Simon, a couple of episodes back, is that I very much enjoy anything elven,
Yes.
which is so true. And Rings of Power, I just really haven't enjoyed it, so I'm like really struggling with that.
Do you think you've
internally.
moved on?
I don't know if I have. Maybe I have. I mean, I've moved.
It's an identity issue. You're having an identity crisis. Do I really like
I mean,
Elven?
who am I? I don't like Elven stuff anymore. I definitely don't like the Marvel movies anymore. What the fuck is happening to me?
What?
I turned
Yeah.
I turned
You're
28
growing
and
up.
I'm a completely different person. Jesus Christ, I thought it was going to be no different, but you turn
Imagine
28
if
where
like
it
Avatar
happens.
2 now. Like,
Do you know what? If it turns out if we rewatch Avatar now for an episode before Avatar 2 and I like that film, I'm probably going to have to
That's
I'm
never
going to do
going
what
to
you
happen.
did and just cancel all of my
Yeah, yeah.
subscriptions because I'm not watching movies anymore. Fuck that. I'm done. But yeah, it was just so long and drawn out and then nothing really happened.
yeah.
6.5 hours later.
And there's not necessarily any like conflict that's going to like lead it into a very enjoyable.
6 months later.
No, it all just kind of feels like one.
Really long setup to, okay, don't worry.
One pair of pants later.
2 years' time when the next season comes out.
3,000 years later.
So I mean, you might not care about this, but should we talk a little bit about Black Adam, even though we haven't seen it? Just the kind of reaction, because I feel like we've spoken about it before in the build
We
up,
can give our non-review review.
or like our non-review review. Because I'm sorry if you're planning on seeing it, but I'm not.
100% go for it. Like, drag that film.
I just it goes back to literally what I just said about like fatigue with like Marvel movies. I'm just starting to not care anymore. I hate that I'm that person. I just have no interest. Now, we did say before the recording, and this would be the one reason to see it, is Pierce Brosnan looks great.
He looks so
the
good.
man rocks the silver hair
beard.
and the beard.
Oh my God.
Christ almighty. And a fan,
He is what I'd call a dreamboat.
he is a dreamboat. Do you know what he is? Do you know what he is? He's hunky. He's a hunk. And he's in his what, like 60s or 70s? Yeah.
God,
You follow him on Instagram, it's fantastic. It's all just selfies. And then,
Stu in Mrs. Doubtfire. That's his ultimate character, I think.
well, no, James Bond is his ultimate character. Simon.
He's
Come
one
on.
of my favourite Bonds, I think.
He's one of the best Bonds. I've heard interviews that
yeah.
people say that if you look at like
Before Bond went all dark and gritty.
yeah, well, if you look at like kind of Bond in the books and stuff. Apparently, no, I haven't really read many of the books because you start reading them and they're horrifically out of touch. But Brosnan is supposedly quite close to how like Ian Fleming would have portrayed Bond more so. I think he's great, and I think it's just a shame that he only got, what was he at 3? No, yeah, 3. No, 4. Sorry, he got 4, and
It's a decent run.
only one of them's good.
Which one?
Goldeneye. Goldeneye is really good. Goldeneye is great. I mean, but then you have Tomorrow Never Dies, which is all about the news, and then The World Is Not Enough, which is this kind of awful like play on the world is turning to oil, and then Dying of the Day is just, I have a weird soft spot for Dying of the Day, and please, if you're listening to this and you enjoy Dying of the Day or have a soft spot for it, please let me know, because I just, even though it's terrible and probably the worst Bond theme ever, it's Madonna and it's absolutely horrendous. Maybe we could play it. But it's really bad. I'm gonna wake up, yes. And the whole film is just like, there's a lot of like crappy CGI and stuff in it, but yeah, I just have a
We
weird
need
soft
to
spot
have
for
a
it.
thing. Maybe we can ask our listeners, because we need to have a think about like what's the best way to do like a James Bond episode, because I have no idea what you're
Maybe we should
talking
have a theme
about.
night where we.
How many Bond films have you seen?
Probably Daniel Craig ones, and I don't know, maybe a couple. No,
What we should do is, if you're listening to this, of every Bond for Sophie, pick one of their movies. Now George Lazenby, it's
Okay.
easy because he only did one. But pick one Sean Connery, which, I mean, I could probably do this for you. It's
who's
going
the
to be
very first one?
the first one is Doctor No, but I would say watch Goldfinger, don't watch Doctor
No,
No.
like the actor.
Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig,
So many.
and whoever comes next. Ooh, Reggae Jean Page, please. I think he'd be great.
Wesley Snipes.
Let's start a campaign.
Yeah, get reggae.
Let's
reggae
start a
from Bond.
campaign. Let's pick the next Bond. Let's get our listeners to vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have
I'm
to do a
excited.
we have to do a
We
Bond
need
episode.
okay. Let's campaign for that.
And be dressed up.
Oh my god, I'd love to do it. Maybe that can be oh my god, if we do a live episode.
Bond party.
Oh yeah, we can do a Bond
my
party.
God,
That'd be great. As I
insane.
said, I've got every single one on DVD.
Oh,
so
that's great.
yep.
I'm
Says about how much of a loser I am. What have you been watching, Sophie? Sorry, I feel like Simon and I.
I guess so. The
talked about what
Spy.
we
So
were
that's
watching.
the
Spy.
one big thing, and then the one other film I'm going to give a shout out to. One, I was at LFF, London Film Festival, but two, I do think that it's quite relevant because of the, I don't know, circus that is our UK politics right now. It's called Triangle of Sadness. You might have heard of it. It won the Palme d'Or in the Cannes Film Festival. It's from, I want to get his name right, Ruben Östlund. So he's the guy that did The Square. Do you remember that film that came out a few years ago?
No.
So he's very big on satire. I think you would love like his direction, Simon. So The Square is all about how he takes on and gives like his own POV and perspective on the art world. And this one is very much about high fashion, advertisement, like capitalism, that sort of thing. And I read this tweet from Jake Garrier, who's the head of distribution and PR at Curzon, which is a perfect praise for the film. And he said, I don't like to make bold promises for a film, but it feels like a good week to be releasing a film where the super rich puke and shit their guts out and then slide around in the puke and shit. Britain is Triangle of Sadness right now. So I'm going to leave it at that. You have to watch this film.
That's a really graphic analogy.
It is it's an actual scene in the film, but
Okay.
without context. It's so well done. And
I appreciate the analogy. I don't necessarily know if you've sold the film to me though.
No, you it is about like taking the disgusting element of the super rich and see what what happens to them when they
puke and shit on the floor.
When you take away their quote unquote power that is money. I haven't watched anything. I mean, the only other thing which I kind of watched, but I kind of multitask at the same time, was The Inside Man. Have you heard of this show?
I've seen that.
Have you actually?
The show?
Oh, no, I've not seen that.
No, that's not a Denzel Washington film.
The Denzel Washington Clive Owen film. It's a good movie though.
It's a good film, by the way. Yeah. It's
It's a Sunday afternoon job.
That is a Sunday afternoon
I
job. that
do
movie,
tend
yes.
to confuse it with The Equalizer, but The Inside Man is with...
Inside Man is Clive Owen
Clive
and
Owen.
his team of bank robbers robbed this bank, or they lock themselves inside a bank with a load of
I
hostages,
feel like
and
this-
Denzel Washington's like the captain and the negotiator.
Yeah, I feel aesthetically it looks very much like The Equalizer. It could be from the same DOP or
Maybe.
the same kind of vibe. Anyway, no, that's the show. So that's from Stephen Moffat.
Oh,
And it's with
okay.
David Tennant and Stanley Tucci. As in,
love
I
David
watched
Tennant.
it because I just love them both and they were really, really good. But oh my God, so many plot holes and like a nonsensical plot. Like just stupid writing and just like people doing things that don't really make any sense. So it's a BBC, I think.
What's this?
It's a movie.
No!
Oh, I liked it.
No!
Can I say something?
No!
I don't get it.
What don't you get about it?
Well, a few days ago, we asked you guys to tell us one film that you tend to go back to when you're not feeling 100%. And I've got to say, this was one of our most popular questions. So, like so many responses. So if you're listening, do let us know if you want us to be asking like this kind of questions and if you want us to talk about something more specific in the future around mental health. Because, yeah, there were many personal responses as well and people getting more vulnerable and opening up. So really appreciate you for that. We also know that like Ben and Simon have quite strong opinions for some of these. So should we go through some of these? I know we have them in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who said Quantum of Solace, you have my heart, is all I will say. Thank you for picking a Bond film, because I can just sit down and watch any Bond film on the weekend and it'll just automatically make me happy. Demetris_is, thank you for saying Quantum of Solace. You also look like you have a very cute cat in your picture.
Sounds great.
Well done.
So, hello.
But yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, which,
Yeah, I was
which makes
surprised at
sense.
that.
I get they're kind of your familiar go-to, happy place. I get that, even though they're not.
that is
like,
true.
Yeah, so it's very like heavy nostalgia.
And a name that Simon will appreciate, Samwise Gamgee, would make anyone feel happy.
Like some,
Thought you'd like that name.
it's interesting because I get some films like Die Hard, why you would pick that film, but at the same time, I'm seeing people choosing Closer or In the Mood for Love, and I'm like, these are difficult films to. Like, I can see how they can get to you when you're not feeling all right. I don't know.
I was making a list of mine on the way here, and I had to stop myself conflating like hangover films with feel-good films when you're down, because they are different.
And
They are different.
I think even saying, films when you're not feeling great, there's kind of two ways, isn't there? There's the movie that like is feel good and make you feel happy, and then there's movies that you're just like, I really want a film that like I relate to, because I think some people made comments about I think it might have been Interstellar and stuff, like one of them, and really kind of connecting with the characters, and
That's true.
it's important to recognize that, as well as that movies that you watch when you're not feeling great aren't necessarily. It's not. You might actually not want to watch like a really fucking happy movie. You might want to be like, actually, I want to watch something that
I want to really revel in it.
Yeah. Sometimes you do.
You're right. I feel like the majority of people did pick quote-unquote happy films, like Back to the Future. Seth was a very popular choice because it's a really feel-good like a film. Like Sleepless in Seattle. So you like Man of Steel for whatever reason. The Prestige.
Why would you put yourself? Thank you to whoever said The Prestige. Why would you put yourself through Man of Steel?
It's interesting because I had this conversation with a friend the other day, and they're the kind of person that will actually watch sad films when they're feeling sad.
Yeah.
And
It's a bit like breaking up with your boyfriend and going, activate breakup playlist. And listening to sad songs.
heartbroken playlist.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. I'm more like a fight kind of person. As in, I want the opposite of what I'm feeling in a way.
Yeah.
I want to mention the listener Instagram, because they've said About a Boy, which is one of my favorites.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's on my
that.
list.
Nice.
It's got the soundtrack by Badly Drawn Boy.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's got Hugh Grant in his prime.
And
It's got Toni Collette in it, who's going to be in our discussion later on.
And the guy from Skins, what's his name? Nicholas Hoult.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah. From that kind of, where I know someone said Love Actually as well, kind of from that
That makes sense.
Ilka films. Well, it's interesting because my girlfriend said Love Actually as well, and she was saying, it is one of those just kind of feel good, like happy Christmas films. But actually, when I think about Love Actually, there's some really like upsetting scenes in Love Actually. Like Love Actually is a weird one that it kind of does both. There's some of the really funny stuff in it, and then there's also like the Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson one where like he's having the affair and she figures it out. Like the scene where Emma Thompson just cries in the bedroom is like heartbreaking. And a lot of like Liam Neeson coming to terms with like his wife's death and stuff.
I think the common
fabulous
thing,
hair in that film.
That's true.
Good wig work.
Good, excellent wig work. Oh my god, fantastic! I don't even think it's a wig. That's what's the great thing about it.
Exactly. The common thing with these films, as you were talking through these scenes, I was trying to understand like why would people go back to them. It is because this time around, because you probably watched that film 100 million times, you actually know what to expect.
There's no peril.
So there is no pain coming up. There is no sadness coming up because you've already experienced that pain of that scene. And it's almost like the safest thing for me right now is predictability in a way. And I know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Like I know when the character's going to cry.
I think somebody mentioned one of the Mission Impossible films, and I think Mission Impossible is a great one because, especially
True.
recently, they're very formulaic, but they're very enjoyable at the same time. Like they're not.
Yeah, Priyank mentions Spider-Man and any Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
Exactly, they're
and the,
perfect.
And the three
yeah.
Bourne films as well, they mentioned.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
they're
because you
perfect.
talked about the Bourne films. You mentioned Bourne Identity last week, I think so. Yeah. The one that I always go to is Run Fat Boy Run. That is hands down. Whenever I'm feeling shit, I go back to that because it has a brilliant soundtrack. Simon Pegg's in it. Dylan Moran's in it.
Perfect.
It's Dylan Moran's character in that film is one of the funniest you'll ever see. Hank Azaria's great in it. Thandi Newton's in it, and she's brilliant. Like the whole cast is fantastic. As you say, there's no peril because I know what's going to happen. He finishes the race, brilliant, and he gets his wife and his son back, and it's just like heartwarming and funny and fun, and
Yes.
I always go back to it, and also, and so again, I think something with Little Miss Sunshine, as I said, the soundtrack in it's really good. Like I really like the fact that I can sit down and then I can probably take some of those songs and then go out for a walk after I watch the movie and like listen to the soundtrack because it's a great kind of like all those movies between like 2006 and 2008 that had just had incredible like indie soundtracks like that, and Little Miss Sunshine, Juno, all these like brilliant movies.
Speaking of music, I mean, my go-to favorites is like Ocean's 11, one of the greatest soundtracks, and
Yeah,
to Scott
brilliant.
Pilgrim versus the World, like just amazing
Fucking
soundtrack.
love that film.
Like, but I was saying, like, it has that kind of like formula sound because it
Yeah.
follows the entire trilogy in a way.
It has that. It's a really nice.
very Soderbergh in a way,
It's
yeah.
very jazzy, and the Scott Pilgrim's just
So,
great.
yeah,
The
the
music in Scott
soundtrack.
Pilgrim is great. Anything by Sex Bomb is just fantastic.
Edgar Wright.
Yeah. Have you seen Scott Pilgrim?
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned Edgar Wright so much.
I don't know why though.
He must be one of your favorites. 'Cause he
He's
always
definitely
has
one.
that.
He's definitely one of mine. I think he's fantastic.
I don't know why. I think last time we mentioned him because of LFF. I don't know why I've mentioned him.
He always
before.
pops up.
He
We
does,
spoke about him
that's
last
true.
week because he's the governor of the BFI.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, LFF.
But I think he has a brilliant understanding of music and films.
Yeah, you and I, Ben, were talking about how like he comes across like a true, movie fanboy.
Well,
Yeah.
one of my favorite things to watch is, and it's basically what the opening sequence of Baby Driver is based off, is this music video that he made in like the early noughties where it's Noel Fielding in a car park and he's a getaway driver and he's singing to the band song and it's fucking brilliant.
It's so
and basically
good.
that is the I think it's basically where he got the idea for Baby Driver, and it's the opening scene, and it's just fucking great. And he just, even in like the music in like Shaun of the Dead and stuff like that is always just fantastic.
I love him. Yeah, I would love for Edgar Wright to come to the podcast.
He'd be like top of the
I
wish
have
list,
no
I think,
idea
for
where
me.
He could have a seat at this table, and we'd make him a nice.
We have a
an empty
fourth
chair.
seat, yeah.
We have an empty chair. Imagine if he lives nearby.
I'm sure he doesn't.
What if he lives in this block?
Imagine if he lived upstairs. He has the whole top floor of the apartment building. He can hear us through the roof like Mr. Heckles and Friends.
I will tag him on, when we post, the episode.
Yeah, do.
You never know.
You never know. What happened? Who knows?
Even on Twitter, like, it's
reach
very
for the
active
stars,
on Twitter.
What else have you got on your list?
I've got Sideways, the wine film. Have you seen that?
The Paul Giamatti, where they're turning vineyards, right? Yeah, I know it. I haven't seen it.
I'm
but I
blanking.
know.
Sideways. It's like a road trip film. It's like the selfish actor guy is getting married and he goes on a stag weekend with Paul Giamatti, his sort of loser friend,
Wow,
and they get
yeah.
up to all kinds of shenanigans. Uncle Buck that I mentioned before. A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I put Nuns on the Run because I love the yellow soundtrack and Robbie Coltrane's in it.
Film number 4.
Who's the other? And Eric Idle's the other
Eric
one,
Idle's
isn't
in
he?
it, yeah.
Fantastic.
All the Real Girls. Sony Pictures classic film. And it's the first time I saw, I never know how to say her name, Zooey Deschanel.
Zoe Deschanel.
Deschanel, yeah.
Speaking of classics, someone did mention it in on the comments. I can't remember who it was, but somebody mentioned Some Like It Hot. And I haven't watched Some
Yeah,
Like It
I saw
Hot in
that.
years. And it made me think, fuck, that actually would be a really good one. Some Like It Hot is just a great film to just kind of sit down and
I love
watch
it.
really
I've
easily.
never properly seen that film.
Do you know what? It's one of those films that I
Everyone
remember.
has to say they love it if you're
Well,
into
do
film.
you know what? Here's the thing, right? So I remember seeing it. I was like 19 in my pretentious movie phase where I was like, I only see Oscar nominated. Like,
Black and white.
where I was a twat. I was just a twat. Like, 'cause I was in uni and I was like, I'll only see movies that are Oscar nominated. And basically, I've been like that. Like, everybody says go see someone like a hot. It's so old. I'm not arsed. Like, I don't really like black and white. No. And it was on in like, it was on at like an outdoor cinema thing that I just happened to be at. And I watched it and I was like, holy fucking shit. That's it. Because we had gone to see the film. It was like a double bill. I can't remember what the film was before. I think the film before might have been Bridesmaids. And then after it was Some Like It Hot. And I was like, holy shit, Some Like It Hot's fucking incredible.
Such a
Did
good
they convert Bridesmaids to black and white?
Yeah. It makes the hungry bear scene so much more intimidating.
A couple of quick shout outs. The first one is from Chloe. Adam's Family Values, like my ultimate comfort movie. I can put practically the entire thing. I agree 100%. And the second one we mentioned before from Maria, Hercules. Yeah, the original one. Oh, it's such a good.
You mean she's not that looking? Is she going to be
the
looking forward to the Guy Ritchie remake?
Exclusive sneak peek into the Guy
Hercules
Ritchie.
Is great. That original the Disney is fantastic.
Such a good one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm gonna pick some of these, maybe not every single one of them, and create a list on Letterboxd so people can actually share it and go back to it when they're not feeling 100%. So we're here to help. We're gonna take a short break and we will be back with Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh, look, a message from our sponsor.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. Nah, yo, hold my poodle. Hey, yo, what's up? Y'all got a problem? Y'all want some of this?
Without much further ado,
here we go again.
This episode's film is the one and only Little Miss Sunshine from 2006. Indie Sweetheart, Sundance Darling. I remember it like back in the day, breaking records left and right. It's interesting because when I think of Little Miss Sunshine, it's one of the films that probably created a kind of sub-genre of, Juno, and then...
was it the Jason, what's his name? Jason Reitman? Is that who directed Juno and stuff?
I have no idea. I'm terrible with names.
Keep going, I'll find his name.
The Me, Earl, the Dying Girl.
It's the sort of quirky feelings.
Yes.
It's quite warm, heartfelt.
And it's that kind of film that is not super silly, as in like scary movie, but not like super art house like the next Godard film. So it's somewhere in between for that kind of crowd that wants to be entertained, but at the same time not fully turn off like your brain at the same time. It's like
it's family drama, but it's trying to be real and it's not trying to be this heightened sense of realism. It is just
it's not super real. It's not like Mummy where it's super brutal and realistic. Like it does follow a certain formula, right? And you can tell how the characters in the film do follow specific, honestly, like archetypes to an extent. But at the same time, like you kind of know it and you're okay with that and you're in for the ride. And it does touch on some interesting themes that we're going to talk about, including mental health. But as always, I have a recap in front of me, which I thought was kind of funny. So I'm going to go for it. And then I'm going to need one of you to recap the ending. In one liner, what according to IMDb, a family takes their girl on a road trip to compete in a beauty pageant. I mean, that is the one-liner.
It's the vaguest
description
of the film,
I think what's helpful is to actually try to break down the characters of the family. So we have the patriarch of the family, the father, Richard, played by Greg Kinnear. Where else has he?
Well, I recognized him from As Good As It Gets, and he's the neighbor.
Oh shit! Got a good film.
I think that was the first film I'd ever seen him in.
I think the same for me. Yeah.
Little Miss Sunshine is the first film I've seen him in. Because the only reason I ever knew him before then was because there was a joke in Futurama where I think Fry is disappearing out of existence, and he just says, "I could feel myself fading away like Greg Kinnear." It's a really harsh joke, but he actually kind of, for me, Little Miss Sunshine was kind of like my discovery of like him, even though he'd been around. As I say, he'd been around for years.
He's a familiar face though. Where else has he been? I mean, I guess that he's done like more supporting roles since, but I feel like that was one of his biggest leading roles.
He's quite understated, isn't he? And I think he's similar to Toni Collette in that regard.
Toni Collette is quite established now.
No, but I mean, he's understated in the way he plays characters.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's not like in your face kind of.
The way Toni Collette, like Ben always says, inhabits the character.
Right.
I think he does the same. Like, for example, in the neighbor character he plays in As Good As It Gets, he's not like stealing the scene.
Yes.
But he's just doing a superb job of like figuring out how to be a really distinctive character in the background.
True. So he's desperately trying to sell his motivational success program with no success, obviously. Meanwhile, we have pro-honesty mom Cheryl played by Toni
Can
Collette.
I just say before we go on,
Yes.
here's all you need to know about Greg Kinnear. He was in the movie Stuck on You, in which he plays conjoined twins with Matt Damon. You need to know no more.
He
There we
does
go.
look like Matt Damon. Like, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I do remember him from Friends as well. He played Ross's girlfriend's ex-boyfriend in it. He's a
Everyone
clever
has been
professor, but everybody's
Friends.
been in Friends.
The equivalent of Friends in the UK is The Bill or Casualty.
Everyone's
If you've
been in Casualty.
then you've made it.
So the mom, she lends her support to the family, including her depressed and suicidal brother, played by Steve Carell, who is fresh out of the hospital after being jilted by his lover. These are interesting words.
Jilty.
Then you have the younger Hoovers, so the 70-year-old would-be beauty queen Olive, played by Abigail Breslin. Has she been anywhere else?
She was in Zombieland in the second one.
That's a really good shot. I don't
Yeah.
remember. Okay. And then you have Dwayne, Paul Dano, and it's a reading
fantastic.
team, who has taken a vow of silence. And topping off the family is the grandfather, Alan Arkin, whose outrageous behavior, aka sleeping around and doing drugs, has recently
Snorting heroin in the old folks' home. Don't try that at home.
So that has recently got him evicted from his retirement home. And when Olive is invited to compete in the Little Miss Sunshine competition in Far of California, the family piles into the van to rally behind her with surprisingly funny results. So that's the film. I mean,
That's a better explanation of the film.
It's a nice setup of the characters because I feel like you can't get to the ending if you don't kind of understand where every single character is coming from and what actually unites them and brings them to the mission. And ultimately, Olive is the connective tissue and kind of brings them together. So who wants to help me to fast track to the, third act of the film?
Every character apart from the mum, played by Toni Collette, is having a kind of life crisis at some point in the film.
I feel like we need to have a show every time we say Toni Collette.
Yeah. Cheryl.
No, it's okay.
And I think that's why I ended up loving all the characters, because they're so flawed. Cheryl's brother has just tried to commit suicide and he's got bandages on his wrists. Her son, Dwayne, finds out on the trip that he can never be a fighter pilot because he's colorblind, which is one of Ben's favorite scenes.
Do you know what? Rewatching that, because I haven't watched that film in about, I'd say I probably haven't watched it in about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And rewatching it now as a grown up, as an adult who is a lot more mature. Genuinely, I find that scene quite distressing, that. Just especially when he starts freaking out in the back of the van.
Olive, the little girl, is in the van and she's showing her older brother, Dwayne, she's doing little tests with him.
She's taking eye tests that she's found in the waiting room of the hospital when they find out that the granddad has died.
So she's showing him these little charts and she's like, oh, what number can you see in this? And it's like a green number 2 inside a sort of red circle.
Yeah.
And it's the classic colorblind test and he can't see it. And then at that moment,
and then Steve Carell he writes down what does this mean? And Steve Carell realizes that you're colorblind. You can't fly jets if you're colorblind.
So Dwayne's life collapses at that point.
Yeah,
and Cheryl's husband, Richard.
Yeah,
he's the one character I'm having issues with.
Yeah, he's the character that's got this sort of get rich quick 9 steps to success scheme book that he's trying to get published. His meltdown moment is where from a call box he finds out he's not getting the publishing deal, and it's really sad, and your heart goes out to him a bit.
Okay,
I felt sad.
Okay,
because he's just almost destined to be this sort of loser character. That's how I sort of viewed him in the film. But then he also makes some really bad calls with how he talks to his daughter. There's a really poignant scene with some ice cream in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And
which keeps getting called back to, even at the end of the movie when Olive meets Miss
that's my favorite scene in the
California,
film.
where she tells her that as they're walking away, she's like, oh my God, she likes ice cream.
So there's a scene where they pull in and the little girl, Olive, wants to order ice cream. And the dad is like, well, I mean, you shouldn't be ordering that because if you eat the ice cream, it's made of milk and milk's got cream in it and it's going to make you fat. And then you can't be like a beauty queen.
Yeah.
And it's really out of line.
But my favorite thing about that scene is that then the whole family rallies around that, and the granddad starts eating the ice cream, giving it to everybody and sharing it around.
So you see the dad he's probably well intentioned in his head, but he's really off the mark.
I think he's just it's interesting because there's a lot of talk, especially in the scene in the motel room with him and Tony Collette. Shot everyone. I think it's almost, his character almost feels like he has this 9 steps things which he has bet their whole life on. So if he doesn't live that, and if like every bit of his being isn't I'm the 9 steps success guy, it's not going to succeed. It has to be that, because if it fucks up, everything's fucked. Because actually, there's quite an interesting. I think we've talked about this with another film. It's probably like what happens after the end of that film that his 9 steps to success hasn't worked. They've kind of technically broken the law by stealing the granddad's body from a hospital and like driving it across state lines. You know, yeah, I completely agree. He's like a deplorable character, but it almost feels like he's put himself in this situation where his whole personality is just consumed by that now. You know, 10 years previous, he probably wasn't that person.
What I was going to add to it was, I think he has a bit of a transformation towards the end of the film, and he has a moment of realization, and he sort of sees himself saying this stuff, and he's like, God, I've got to sort myself out. This is going to damage my daughter, and like, I need to.
Well, and I think the death of his dad kind of is a moment to him to be like, oh shit.
I had a different reaction to this character. Like, I actually thought that it was the one character that was very poorly written. In the end, when he got the news of him not getting the book deal or whatever, I actually didn't care. And I didn't think that even like him joining his daughter on stage in the end, which was kind of like his redemption moment. I mean, like, look at him, I still love you guys. I was like, that is a cartoonish way of a redemption, let show redemption, because up until that point, there was, and I'm not saying that was down to the acting. I think he did the best he could with what he had. But from a writing perspective, like all of the scenes that he had to kind of own, he was portrayed as a emotionally abusive, insecure man. I wasn't able to see like a gray area with him. Even when he got the news of his dad, he was like, okay, off we go then. Like there wasn't like, I would have loved to see a scene of vulnerability somewhere where he's just, you know, because I feel like what you're saying is that he, you know, you're probably implying that he had these realizations of, oh, hey, I fucked up there. Or, hey, I could have done better. Or like, oh, hey, I should take a step back. But we never see any of that. Like, we just see the cartoonist, like, I don't know, black side of him as opposed to see like the more nuanced way of it. So for me, like, I wasn't able to see or care about his redemption in the end. I would have loved to see a bit more color, but that is my only criticism of the film in particular. Like, he was such a stark contrast compared to all of the rest that had much more room to play around. Like, I could see both sides with every single one of them. With him, I was like, I actually don't care. Nothing, you're an asshole. And I think Tony Collette should get a divorce. But I think that was down to the writing rather than anything else. But again, that's probably like, I don't know, something minor. But yeah, that was my only call out. It comes to that final redemption arc, which I feel like everyone had in a way, perhaps except Toni Collette, who was like the same person from the beginning to the end.
She's like the anchor point.
Yes, you're right.
Well, I'm just trying to think of what's Steve Carell's redemption point in it as well.
He went from being like the second best Proust fanboy in the
Well,
country.
I thought perhaps
number one actually.
Number one, actually. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Perhaps his moment is on the pier. So during the beauty pageant section, Steve Carell and Dwayne go for a walk along this pier to chat together.
Him and Dwayne have a great relationship throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
They almost kind of learn quite a lot from one another.
Definitely.
And Dwayne's kind of opening up and explaining about what it's like to be a teenager and how much he says he wishes he could skip out his college years and just skip to being an adult and get out of this like horrible period of his life that he's not enjoying.
And then he talks about Proust.
Yeah, well, and then Steve Carell sort of says, but you know, these are your prime suffering years.
Yeah.
You've got to really get into it. This is the making of you.
Yeah, he makes the point, doesn't he, that like apparently Proust talked about like the years that made me as like a writer and stuff like that were those years of suffering. And he's like, yeah, as you say, like, you know, Jesus, 18 to 21, they're your prime years of like just suffering and feeling terrible about yourself. You know, that's the most interesting thing. Like, I do wonder as the movie goes on, does Steve Carell's character see a lot of himself in Dwayne?
I think that it just shows that Steve Carell's character isn't wholly selfish and self-absorbed. He's interested in Dwayne. He wants to help him. He wants to like pass on. And
his particular profession, which is academia, I do feel like, because I do have people in my family that are in that kind of industry, like profession, however you want to call it. And it is so easy to be tempted by that sort of validation from your peers and community. And I do feel like he fell in that trap, like understandably so. So I think his redemption journey is kind of breaking the like out of that, as in like you're defined by what you do and how you're perceived into your community in that sense. So for me, in the end, it's like maybe that's not true. Like maybe that's not the right way to interpret that scene. But for me, his redemption moment is when he runs. When, you know, in the end, like in the when
he sprints. He has that really bizarre upright run.
It's like a Steve Carell run.
I love it.
That was a nice touch.
For me, because that was him running for his niece. Like that was like not giving a fuck about Proust or like the newspapers, like what he's like. It was just like, let's get back to the basics, the anti-establishment, really going back to the, you know, elusive nature of the American dream. Let's break. I don't know. I feel like that was his moment in a way. But I do think that because you mentioned his relationship with Dwayne, it was kind of soft. Like even his what's the word, demeanor kind of softened throughout the film. He was very defensive to the dad as well, and towards the end he was like, you know what, just fuck it. I don't really. I don't even want to engage.
There's the scenes in some of the scenes in the van, like him, like clearly doesn't really like Richard as well, and that scene around the dinner table at the start where he's trying to explain all of what happened, and he keeps interrupting him and being like, you know, you have to. He like basically says like, you know, oh, your uncle made like he made some stupid choice and stuff like that, and is so flippant about something incredibly serious, and it's like, God, you would just hate that guy. Like he's such a thing. Steve Carell has all the reason to hate him, and then you know the bit where he's pretty sarcastically like asking him about saying like, oh, I don't mind being a loser and all that kind of stuff in the car. You know. But
I do feel like when we have a look at every single one of the characters, they do start with a certain like false belief of like, I'm supposed to be X. So, and it goes back to the wider concept of American dream, because I do think that the directors try to be kind of pointed towards like this establishment back in the day. That was George W. Bush. Remember, like in the hotel room, there was the news came on and Bush was on TV, and then and Dwayne like turned that off like after 3 seconds, where like I don't know, he was talking about Dick Cheney or whatever, and then there was something similar in the contest as well. Like you could tell that there was something critical around that.
Well, we should talk about the contest because that is the end of the film, and it's a very very strange kind of scene.
Yeah, it's very clever because on the one hand, so you got this very innocent, 8-10-year-old girl whose dream is
the family makes it to the contest, basically.
Well, the whole film is about getting to this contest on time, 3:00 or whatever. And Olive gets there and she discovers that she's not like any of the other girls in this contest. All the other girls are sort of much slimmer and more made up and more kind of like stylized. And she's just way more naive and innocent and less kind of tarnished by consumerism and all of the stuff that these other girls have experienced. And it's very clever because you end up finding yourself laughing at this beauty pageant where all these little children are being like sexualized, but because Olive doesn't get it, she does the most sort of adult sexual dancing of all at this contest, but because she doesn't understand what she's doing, it's funny and it's innocent and it's okay to enjoy that.
It's incredible how her routine, like dance routine, is much more explicit in theory, but it feels so much more innocent.
Because it's coming from this like naive place.
Yes.
And that's why it's clever. And
which, by the way, her grandpa, showed her how to
choreographed.
Which is probably the weirdest thing, I suppose, if you want to get into that. But
we'll get to that.
So it's this lovely moment of all these young girls sort of getting conditioned into becoming Miss World type characters, and then Olive just bowls up, does this like showgirls dance act. Not really understanding what she's doing, but just having a great time being herself.
What was even more disturbing to me is the fact that when, she did her thing, the parents and the people that worked in that sort of contest or whatever were actually much more offended by her.
Yeah, loads of people walk out.
They weren't able to handle their own exploits, as what we're doing is right. So
because Olive was essentially sending it up. She was she was taking it to like gas mark 7. And that was probably too much for them to see.
I feel like grabbed a mirror and kind of projected their own insecurities.
They didn't like what they saw.
Yeah, they didn't like what they saw, kind of thing.
The one thing that I noticed on rewatching it was because the first time I saw the film, I found the compere of the beauty pageant incredibly creepy.
Yeah.
Really hard to watch.
Weird.
He was singing into the microphone really close to the kids' faces and being really almost lechy. Whereas this time I didn't find it so bad, but I guess it's probably because I've seen it so many times. But yeah, he is a really gross character and really well played, well cast, and amazing acting.
That's true.
But yeah, he really amplifies that scene really well, I think, especially with the singing. It just gets so ridiculous, it becomes farcical.
Yeah.
It's almost like a sort of parody of itself.
Lechy is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, it is the perfect word for it.
And then you have it all tied together by the entire family kind of defending her and
getting on stage,
coming
and
full
dancing
circle,
with her,
and it kind of being this the picture of, definitely not the perfect family, but this is their family and this is who they are.
Yeah, it reminded me of, because you mentioned Everything Everywhere earlier, and it kind of reminded me of that. I don't know, I had the same feeling as you were, because you mentioned it earlier, because I was thinking, you have lost everything. You have, not everyone, but Dwayne has lost his dream in a way. You've had a divorce, you've had the book deal of the century, whatever. So you've lost the actual competition. So you've lost everything. So why don't you just act like you have nothing else to lose and just dance? I think it has a sort of kind of sentiment, the dance in a way. But I was going to ask you, Simon, because I know in the last episode we talked about, choreography and how it's a bit tacky to end something with a dance sequence. Did you feel it was tacky to end the film like that, or
I thought
not really?
I thought it was perfect.
Great. Okay.
I thought it was just felt really real, and it was really well shot, and it matched the style of the rest of the film.
Yes.
I think in what were we watching? Matilda that we watched recently. It was there was a break point in the film, and then it was now we're going to be a music video.
Okay.
And it felt very jarring, whereas in this, it just felt like a natural progression of the film.
And yeah, you're right. And it does go back to the entire film as well, because even though one of the main characters, aka the grandpa, Alan Arkin, isn't on the stage, it does feel and his presence is very much there, and I feel it's where you can feel him the most.
He basically dies on the way. So
you can feel him the most, because it kind of is a bit of a tribute to him in a way.
Well, she takes the microphone and says, I want to dedicate this to my grandpa. It's where's your grandpa?
Yeah.
In the trunk of our car.
I think
yeah, that's true.
that's an amazing line.
That's a good line.
So candidly delivered.
So to get onto the final scene, I think one of the things that I found most funny about the film is the horn of the camper van.
Yes.
And so about halfway through, they're on this road trip and all sorts of shenanigans are going down. For example, the van breaks down and it turns out they can no longer use gears number 1 and 2. So to get into the van, they have to push it and start it in the third gear and then all jump in one by one, which is brilliant. But then on the motorway, I think is Richard having an argument or something? But he's driving the van.
I think somebody cuts him off.
That's it. Someone cuts him off, and then he smashes the horn with his fist, and then the horn just won't stop. And it's got this really hilarious kind of sad, melancholic whine. It's
I was going to ask,
gets them pulled over from Hank by Hank from Breaking Bad, which is
He's
crazy.
incredible.
So
That scene with the
good.
policeman.
I was going to ask the art house question of the podcast episode. What do you think the horn symbolizes?
Well, it just symbolizes the
is it-
absolute chaos and
the farcical nature.
It's just
Okay.
everything that's going to go wrong has gone wrong, and the horn just sums that up. And
Okay, I love that.
it's like anything terrible that happens, the horn's there in the background, just making it funny.
I
mean,
that.
the car is kind of like the family. It's like the wheels are just coming off as the film goes along. By the end of it, I think when they drive through, when Steve Carell opens the door to run towards the hotel, the door of the van just falls
Oh
off.
my God, yes.
Everything, and one of the actual final scenes after the dance is them basically putting the van back together, putting the door back on, pushing it to start and drive too. And it does this kind of old school, the final scene is old school Hollywood. They are literally driving off into the sunset, the sun is setting behind the Hollywood hills and the van is driving down the highway. It's very
That's why I
old
mentioned the
school
horn,
Hollywood.
because the final scene is the sound of the horn just going into the distance as they drive away, which is a perfect, because as you say, the van is a character in the film, and it's a metaphor for everything that's happening.
Just thinking about this as well, about the granddad and stuff, who's obviously not there for the ending. one of his last lines, probably is his last line before he pops his clogs. It's this really kind of quite an upsetting scene actually. Is Olive just gets really upset and she's like, I don't know if I should. I think she's like, I don't know if I should do it. And he's like, why the fuck would you want to do it? She's like, because I don't want to be a loser. And she's getting really upset about it.
Yeah.
And he says to her, it's the complete opposite of everything her dad's saying, and it's a really important message from the film. It's like, of course you're not a loser. A loser is somebody who's so afraid of losing that they don't even try. He's like, as long as you try, you're a winner. And that's like his message to her, and his final message to her is that I don't care what you do. I don't care if you win or you lose. As long as you try, that's what's important. Don't listen to your dad. He's full of shit. But her dad's almost like trying to follow that same thing of like, well, like I need to win. But actually, if your definition of a winner is just someone who tries, it depends on what your definitions are. It's a really, like, his final scene of that one is quite an important message to Olive that kind of keeps her going through the rest of the film.
I love that.
And I like that scene because it unpicks some of the damage the dad's done by going on about don't be a loser, be a winner. Because poor little Olive's like, I don't want to be a loser because her dad's banging on about it all the time.
Because her dad's just battered it into her, is that you're going to be a loser.
And the grandpa kind of unwinds that a bit, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's basically a toxic perfectionist waiting to happen. You can see that unless someone pulls the brake on that girl, is gonna end up like a workaholic.
It's gonna end up like her granddad snorting heroin.
Probably, yeah.
That's the problem.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Anything else to add or to comment on that very final scene? I mean, it's very straightforward. I mean, they're off like on their way home, right? I mean, that's it. That's the idea. Like,
I as I say, it's quite nice the haphazard nature of the ending where they all get in the van, start the van. I think Steve Carell does say his thing of whenever they keep pushing the van, he always goes, need I remind people that I am the number one proof scholar in the United States? And he always says it every time they're starting off the van, and he says it and they get in. And then as the woman who runs the beauty contest who's called the police, who like they can't, that's the whole thing in between the dance scene and the actual ending is them sitting in the police station and the policeman being like, you're free to go as long as you agree to never enter a competition in the state of California ever again. And Steve Carell's just like, I think we can agree to that. And it's really nice kind of like, because it's this thing of, I think, Steve Carell and Dwayne realize that like there's a point when they go after the scene on the boardwalk, they go back and they're like, oh, we should go back, and they go into the room and then this stays in the door and then they just walk out and they're both like, what the fuck? Like we need to go and tell Olive not to do this. And it's clearly Steve Carell in that moment is clearly being like, yeah, why the fuck would you want to come back and do a competition here? Because this is fucking weird. Like this is bizarre shit. But they go to push the van, and the woman who has reported them for who leads the competition
she's pure evil. She's a baddie.
Yeah,
she's a good baddie.
She's like the Trunchbull in
Melissa Leo, isn't she?
Yeah, and she's giving her like scanning her ticket out of the guard hood, and they just come along. She won't move, so they just crash through the barrier on the other side. It's like making a break for the border and driving off into the sunset down the highway. I love it.
It's wild to think of a time when Steve Carell and Toni Collette, take a shot, were the household names, right?
Yeah.
Because back in the day, back in the day, 2016, that's 2006. Sorry, that was how many years ago?
16 years ago.
So he was probably more well known than Steve Carell at the time.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because he would have just started The Office. The Office would have started like a year before, so we'd have
That's
just
the
done
first time I saw him, I think, in Little Miss Sunshine.
So he was, so he was very much like an up and coming actor. So it's great. And even Paul Dano, right now, he's very, very well established right now. But at the time, he was very, very young as well.
Would have probably been one of Paul Dano's first kind of few roles, I would have thought. Yeah,
probably.
Because he's pretty young. I think he's still a teen. He's like a teenager, isn't he? Yeah.
So good.
Anyway, watch it if you haven't seen it. It's brilliant.
I mean, I hope by that point, and because we spoiled the fuck out of
everything.
that film.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It gets better with every viewing.
It does. That is true. Yeah.
You can spoil that film and it's still like, incredible.
You can. Yeah, it's one of those ones that the ending doesn't really matter. The ending doesn't
There's
matter.
Nothing to spoil.
It's not where they're going. It's how they get there.
Exactly. Remember, oh my god, we're gonna keep going forever, but I just remember the
another thing.
The policeman cameo with Dean Norris from Breaking Bad. We have two Breaking Bad cameos. We have Bryan Cranston as well.
So basically, the van gets pulled over with the whole family in it. They've got the dead body in the back.
Yeah.
The horns going off, and the this policeman drags the dad out of the van and makes him put his hands on it, and because basically
because he says to him, he's like, "Don't look." He's like, "Please don't look in the trunk." Why would you say that to a policeman anyway? Like,
so the policeman's like, "Right, I've got to look in the trunk," and he opens the trunk, and the first thing he sees are these porn mags.
They fall out. That's what happens. They fall out of the.
And
boot.
so of course he just focuses on them and completely misses the body wrapped up in a sheet, and thinks the dad is just scared of his porn being found.
He's holding them out of sight. The funniest thing about it is he's holding them out of sight, looking at the family in the car, and he's like, sweet family, and he's just waving at it. He's like, you got a nice family
That's
there.
so funny.
and then he really loves the porn.
But then he finds the one that Steve Carell's bought for himself, the men's magazine, and he's just like, and Greg Kinnear's like, don't like that one too, something different.
It's so funny.
But that actor that plays the policeman,
Dean Norris,
he acts with his face, his eyes. He speaks this amazing low.
Do you remember him from Breaking Bad?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Hank.
he's fantastic.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
I have a feeling because he's so good in that scene. I have a feeling it looks like it was improved. Like I have a feeling
it's so organic.
I feel like he did something in that wasn't quite there. Like I feel like he went from stereotypical policeman to like being super earnest about like.
I think as soon as he finds the porn, that kind of feels like they were just like, listen, just have a bit of a laugh with it, like just kind of just be weird, just be a little bit
one of the magazines they're called like Doug's or something. Yeah. He's like, nice. I really love it.
Yeah, he keeps putting the magazines underneath each other and go, I love that one.
Oh, I love this stuff. I love it. God bless you. God bless you. Don't worry, I'm not gonna bust you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he's like, and then he gets to the gay one and he's just like, and then he quickly makes his excuses and leaves.
Easily my favorite scene in that film.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, I think we solved the ending again. Pretty much so.
We're pretty deep on the characters there.
I know, right? Like,
It's because the characters were so well written and had such depth.
Exactly.
That we were able to talk about them.
Yeah, exactly.
You sound like me, Simon. Jesus.
Also, fuck the American dream. Or, as Dwayne's teaser said, Jesus was wrong.
Yeah, Jesus was wrong. Yeah, oh my God.
That was so funny. Okay, that's solved. Anyway, we hope this episode cheered you up or made your day or evening, wherever you might be listening. We would love to know if you'd like us to do more episodes like this one. Please send your recommendations and suggestions either in a DM on That Final Scene on Instagram, or you can contact us on our website at thatfinalscene.com. Reminder that we do have a website. We have so many different options for you. You can also WhatsApp us. I'm also sure you can find the guy somewhere online.
Sophie's burner phone.
Burner phones as well. Again, all the info will be included in the episode show notes. If you're a new listener, hello you. Please subscribe to our podcast. And if you're an old friend, I think it's time to send that episode to the group chat. I feel like Little Miss Sunshine is a perfect film for that. So the next episode's film will be The Incredible Black Panther. So yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks as usual. See you on the internet. Goodbye.
Did you like it? Did you like that?
Did I like it? I loved it.
I had no idea you could milk a cat.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.